Around 11:30 something, I heard somebody knocking on my door. I thought it was Amadou that came back from work. It was some detective knocking on my door. They was like, "Can we come in?" I was like, "Yes." And they started asking me questions.
I was sitting right here in this office. The phone rings, and usually at that time we have the answering machine on, and something just told me to pick up the phone. And it was the inspector of the 43rd Precinct, and he told me about the shooting 3 blocks up. And so I continued to ask the perfunctory questions that an assembly person would ask when you hear of this. My first question was a police officer hurt?
I got a phone call early that morning by a friend of mine, and he said, "Brother Weatherspoon, there's been a tragedy up here. One of our people has been shot and killed by the and we need your help in dealing with the police." I've been on many crime scenes, many deaths, but in stepping in that vestibule, there was an ominous presence. I looked at the bullet holes in this doorway, and I could not believe what I was seeing. The number of bullet holes, not only in the doorway, but some that had gone down the hall and through the entrance door of the apartment itself. So the question was, what happened? Why did it happen? And who are the guys that are responsible?
As soon as I walk outside to the front door, I see the guy laying down on the floor like this. His head on this side and his feet was on the other side, which was like this, cross between. Was bleeding all over. There was blood all over this vestibule right here. And I fell on top of him. They picked me up and bring me inside to the house. I never gave those guys permission to search my house, which they went in there, searched all over the bed, took the bed off, searching for gun, searching for drugs, searching for, I don't know what they was looking for.
The house was ransacked. You saw things tipped over. It was a mess. The house was a mess. They were clearly looking for stuff, looking for something to pin against Diallo.
What would be the reason for searching the apartment of a gunshot victim, especially someone that you've shot, someone you don't know, someone for whom you are not looking for, someone for whom there is no warrant, there is no legal reason for you to even address this man, let alone go in and search his apartment?
The detective asked me to go to the prison with them. I was like, for what? They said, we gotta talk to you about something. They was asking me, do he have a girlfriend? Do he work? Do he ever been arrested? Do you know his mother, his father?
Now all of that spells out very clearly that there's a cover-up afoot, because they themselves knew that their own officers had shot him.
I was at the prison till 8 in the morning with the detective. I get back over here. I get back home at 8 in the morning. With my phone ring, I picked it up, and there was a lady on the phone. She was like, I work for this channel, news. Can I have a word with you? I was like, okay. I step out. She was like, oh, that was your roommate that got shot yesterday? I was like, yes. Do you know who shot him? I was like, no, I don't know, but we'd like to find out. She was like, the police. I was like, no, I don't believe you. Because all the time that I spent with this detective and at the prison, they didn't mention that Amadou got shot by a police officer, which they was asking me, Mr. Diallo, do you want us to help you to find who shot Amadou? They was asking me, do Amadou have enemies? Do he have somebody that want him to die?
They had one overlying mission over everything, and that was to arrest people with illegal guns. The idea is, if you get the person who possesses the illegal gun before they use it, you're saving lives. And it was extremely successful. You cannot believe the numbers and types of weapons that these police officers recovered while they were put together.
Officers were driving up to blacks and Latinos and searching them illegally on the street, just searching them. No probable cause, nothing, just searching them. And over the years, we've gotten numerous complaints from people, from parents that have been stopped. Their sons have been stopped. Young men have talked about the constant harassment by the police. Over 500,000 people in specific areas of the city have been searched and frisked. And of those searches and frisks, more than 95% of the time, they warranted nothing. No weapon, no drugs, nothing.
When you remove an illegal gun, we're not talking about a cab driver who has an illegal gun or a bodega owner who has an illegal gun. We're talking about people walking down the street. You take that gun, you're impairing, you're taking away their ability to use it. So without actually going out and pulling someone out of the fire, you're saving a life. So I think that they were a successful and useful unit put in tough neighborhoods to stop violent crime before it happens.
I know that the street crimes unit came out of the Giuliani administration. I also know that their motto was, "We own the night." And so when you have officers that have been turned loose with a mindset that they own the night, not we're protecting and serving in the night, not that we're going to make sure that you're safe and secure at night, none of the other things. We're talking about we own the night. When we talk about ownership, we're talking about people who believe that something belongs to them. And if the police who don't live in that community own the night, then what do the residents own? As evidence in Diallo's case, not even his own self and his own person and his own doorway on Wheeler.
Four officers in a car, police car. They were patrolling a neighborhood. One of the reasons why they were in this particular neighborhood is because there was a serial rapist out there who was attacking women. One of the officers saw Mr. Diallo, thought that he had moved suspiciously. Two of them exited the car to speak to him. There's no question about it, to speak to him. And when they approached him, he reacted in a way that they perceived it as if he was drawing a weapon. And they responded to that. That's what happened in a nutshell.
From his perspective, there were four white men running down the street with guns. And if I'm a black man in America and I see four white men with guns, I do not assume that they're the police. The 48-hour rule in New York City, as I understand it, was a rule that allowed an officer 48 hours before he or she had to respond in writing to an incident. It gives you 2 days at least to get your story straight. It gives you an opportunity to coordinate what your response is going to be, to meet with your attorney, to have your attorney talk to your potential co-defendants' attorneys, and everyone to decide how much information will be imparted and how much will be saved in case we get indicted.
So this crew from the street crime unit, which was alleged to be out looking for a rapist, and let me say this, Amadou Diallo did not fit the description of the man wanted for the rape in the Bronx. But that was the ruse under which they would say that they thought he was the rapist, that they thought he was reaching for something, that he crouched and he turned and they opened fire. None of that ever happened.
We had heard that Mr. Diallo was an individual who had a slight speech impediment. So turning around to show your wallet might be something because he was nervous when these police officers approached him. I don't know the country, in the country he came from, but in a lot of countries you live, when a police officer approaches you, what you show them is your papers. So here, look, I'm legal.
They depict him as an immigrant who didn't understand English, which is a lie. Amadou Diallo spoke 5 languages. He was more intelligent and better educated than the savages that killed him.
They allege that when they told Amadou to show his hands and to show ID that he pulled a wallet out of his pocket and was in a combat stance. No one in any state of mind hands a wallet to a police officer like that.
He always told me that if the police says stop, stop. He always told me that. So he knew about that. He knew about if police told you to stop, raise your hand up, you gotta do it, because they might shot you if you don't do it.
I don't know what was in his mind at that time. And we never knew that. Unfortunately for him and everybody, we never knew why he reacted in that fashion. There were a lot of speculation, and there was a lot of work done by the New York City Police Department to try and figure that out. But you really couldn't know what was in his mind because he didn't survive, unfortunately.
There's a notion in police training around the country that a dead man tells no tales. And I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And from that vantage point, what happens is that we find when the victim, particularly is black or Latino, there's a presumption that people are not going to care. There's a presumption that the community is going to be angry for a few days and then go back to sleep. And there's a presumption that I can say that I'm in fear of losing my life. I thought I saw a gun. I thought he had a gun. I thought I was thinking that he had a gun. And so I took the action based on what my mindset was. And the courts invariably and more often than not have vindicated the officers.
After I had really learned about this, and plus after having spent a considerable amount of time with my client, I mean, every case I'm morally committed. I'm required to be under the Constitution. I put my heart and soul in every case. But when I found out what went on here, and coupled with, or actually juxtaposed with, the abuse these guys were getting in the press and the comments about them being racist, I was very, very committed to this, very committed to it. And I mean, every lawyer wants a big case. I mean, this is the big case. This is what you work for. This is what you strive for. And it was an opportunity for me, and I was certainly going to take it. The indictment charged murder in the second degree as the top charge. Murder in the second degree is intending to kill someone and killing someone. There was a second, I believe there was a second count of murder in the second degree, which is a reckless homicide. There were also lesser charges, such as manslaughter in the second degree, criminally negligent homicide. In other words, they took the lesser charges, the less serious charges, with the top charge being the murder charge.
With regard to the indictments in the Diallo case, I don't think they would have transpired had there not been such a vocal response from the community. The outrage by the people, and you see, this case, it really got to the core, not only of the black community, but it got into the core of the city at large. You had Mayor Dinkins going to jail. You had a U.S. congressman, corporate heads who were speaking out against what transpired on Wheeler Avenue.
I think, in my opinion, that the indictment was came forward. Well, first of all, grand jury found there was reasonable cause to believe a crime was committed, a reasonable cause to believe that these individuals committed a crime. I think what should have happened is that the district attorney's office, and again, this is their decision, it's their discretion, really rushed this case in the grand jury. They should have taken more time. They should have approached this individually. If I were the district attorney, again, I have a great amount of respect for Rob Johnson, district attorney of Bronx County, and the people who work for him. I come from that office, but I would have handled it a little bit differently. But that's their call. Over 1,000 people were arrested at Police Plaza protesting this case. 1,000 people. Some people who were, media people, movie stars. You had Reverend Al Sharpton leading this. These people completely rushed to judgment. They knew little about the case. They had a strong visceral reaction to what they perceived to be a very violent event, which it was clearly an act of violence, but one that was justified given the circumstance. We filed a motion, really with the lead of co-counsel Ben Epstein, with the court, with actually the higher court, the appellate division is where you have to go. It's an interesting motion to change the venue. In other words, to take this case because we thought that the jury pool would be affected by all the negative publicity, including the protests, and have these officers tried in another county. And we filed that in the appellate division, and the appellate division, in a very, I would say it's historic, at least legally significant, agreed with us and decided to change the venue. We didn't suggest the venue to them. They picked Albany. And Albany was where we went to try the case.
The police attorneys, they contracted Burton Roberts. If you look at the movie Bonfire of the Vanities, the movie was about, he was highlighted in that movie. He was also the Chief Justice here in the Bronx, who retired and now became a lobbyist or an attorney, and a high-priced attorney. So he was hired for just for that 1 day, 2 days, to ask for this change of venue. Naturally, having friends in the courthouse, that change of venue was granted.
And moving it to Albany not only did it move it to an environment that was more favorable to the officers, but it also moved it to an environment that was further away from organizations that were organizing to demand justice on behalf of the Diallo family.
Look, the difficulty I would have had in the Bronx is that because of all the protests, because of all the negative publicity, I think there would have been pressure on jurors, on regular folks from the Bronx, making the kind of decision of quitting these police officers. So you want to put your client in the best possible position, and that's why we moved for change of venue.
These police officers now were going to be judged by people who weren't really their peers. The change of venue allowed the defense attorneys to go up to Albany with people who never been to the Bronx, who only had the images of Fort Apache, the Bronx, and movies and stuff like that, to paint this as the Wild Wild West. And so that was, that I think was a huge effect. The fact that the jurors were never brought down to this community just so they could see the community themselves. I think that played a huge role in the acquittal of these 4 police officers.
I tell you right now, Ken Boss would have been acquitted in the Bronx. That's just my opinion, but I believe he would have been acquitted in the Bronx.
"10 days following the shooting, myself and David Greaves, the publisher of Our Time Press, were at Wheeler Avenue. And it was there, and at that time, that I found bullets number 42 and number 43. This was forensic ballistic evidence that the crime scene should have recovered the day of the shooting. The first round I found was in the lower front right door jamb at the front door. It was a bullet hole, it was unmarked, and it was ironic, there was a reporter, a film crew from ABC News there that was watching what we were doing. And I brought it to their attention. The crime scene unit was called back to the scene. Found the second round in the house. A round had gone down the hallway, over the doorway to Amadou's apartment, through the kitchen and into a closet. 10 days after the shooting. So a question has to be asked, how thorough is the crime scene unit of the New York City Police Department?
A lot of people have asked us about, the 41 shots, and that was something that I guess really was affected the media and the public perception. What they didn't realize is that each police officer carries a gun, I think that has 14 or 16 bullets in it. And those weapons are capable of being fired, each one unloading in less than 5 seconds.
The last thing an officer should ever do, the very last thing, is discharge a round from his weapon. Human life is held in no regard by most law enforcement officers, except when a member of the service is killed.
Police officers are trained to shoot until their target goes down. And those 41 shots, we believe that they were fired in less than 5 seconds. So this event happened. People, you have the TV, you have the shootout, how long it takes. People look at a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. We believe, and I think correctly, that this whole incident took from the first shot to the last spot less than 5 seconds.
Had Amadou, as they allege, reached and pulled out something, they were still required to make an assessment. Number two, a police officer is required and is instructed to take cover, to conceal his body, because your safety is first and foremost. If you're down bleeding, you're of no use to anybody else. Those officers had parked cars right there behind them. These are all things that are taught in the academy. Another thing is that when you're firing on a subject, you have to assess whether or not the person is firing back. You just don't shoot randomly and continue shooting and shooting and shooting. If no one is firing at you, why are you firing?
This was an extremely emotional event for these police officers. They were, I'm not talking about the trauma afterwards, which was terrible, realizing what they did, but right afterwards, when they realized that poor Mr. Diallo had a wallet and not a gun, these guys were traumatized. They are not cowboys, they were human beings. And I think that gets lost on people. We're all part of this television. You see a police officer drawing his weapon on TV and shooting every week. When a police officer fires a weapon, most never even fire their weapon throughout their careers. It is a traumatic event. And as much training as you can get, it's still trauma. You don't blow smoke off the top of the barrel of your gun after you fire. It's scary.
What were you guys doing? Were you all so traumatized that you just didn't know what to do? And you're trained professionals? Matter of fact, Kenneth Boss should have known what to do because he had killed somebody already. Kenneth Boss murdered Patrick Bailey 15 months prior to shooting Amadou Diallo. And he did that in the 75th Precinct on Sheffield Avenue. He shot Patrick Bailey in the back. And Patrick bled to death in the hallway of a building that was owned by his parents. This officer never should have been on patrol while that case was pending. So how did he go from the 7-5 to the street crime unit? The DA never got to these things. Unfortunately, Bronx DA Robert Johnson was very much handicapped in this case. His staff did not want to prosecute a police officer. It's almost the scourge of death for an assistant DA to prosecute a cop. The two assistant DAs that had it, they did not assist each other through the course of the trial. When questions were not properly phrased and they were objected to by the defense, one did not come to the assistance of the other to assist them in restructuring the question. Questions were just dropped and left.
They put some of the top prosecutors on it. These were smart, experienced lawyers who I knew very well. No question. No question.
Why is it that the jury doesn't know that there were 43 rounds as opposed to 41? The roommate, why wasn't he questioned as to the fact that he was taken to the precinct, kept there for so many hours? Why doesn't the jury know that?
We put on some very, very strong forensic evidence. We had a couple of doctors come in and testify to talk about, about the injuries this individual suffered and the position he was in. Particularly my colleagues, they did a great job with the city medical examiner who came in with a theory. Well, we all did a good job. I should pat myself on the back too. The city medical examiner who came in, I thought, with a theory about this, which was just dead wrong. And about the positioning of the body and which shots where the individual was hit, he was dead wrong, and we showed that.
The courts of law do not go after the truth. The judges and the lawyers, and they're all lawyers, they argue points. They go to school to learn how to argue points.
I believe that a cornerstone to the defense here, something very important, was that these officers didn't have to. They're not constitutionally required. The jury would have been told that they didn't have to testify. Each and every one of them testified on their own behalf, subjecting themselves to rigorous, tough cross-examination. They insisted upon it. And as the lawyers, if they insist upon it, we have to put them on. And we were glad we did.
They never asked me to come to the trial, which I would love to be over there for my friend, for my cousin, and for my brother Amadou. But They never took me in there.
Why do you think they didn't ask you to testify?
I don't know, but I would love to know why.
When we got the verdict, it was a great relief, I have to tell you. It was a tremendous amount of pressure on the case. We all worked, well, before the trial we worked hard. During the trial we worked extremely hard. I remember one night being up to something like 4 o'clock in the morning. Mike Marinaccio and I, who was Jimmy Culloden's partner, we were up to represent Richie Murphy. We were up till 4, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and we had a full day of testimony the next day. There were lots of nights like that. We worked really, really hard. It felt great to win. It was a great night, the night we won. It was a great night for us. But it was a better night for the police officers. These guys had so much on their plate. They were looking at spending a good number of years in jail if convicted. So the pressure was on.
The trial was a total travesty of the judicial system for us.
The inference is that these black men, these superhuman or subhuman individuals, evoke fear in white people who are armed to the tooth with semi-automatic weapons. They're afraid, so they can fire at will on an individual who doesn't look like them, and it is okay. If black police officers were killing white men who were unarmed in this city, how long do you think they would remain on the job? Do you think that the PBA would be championing a cause for them at City Hall?
Do I think the district attorney intentionally threw the case? I don't know, to be honest. Certainly, there's a pain there because Amadou, we would have hoped, would have been the last to suffer this way. And there have been many more all across the country.
A couple days after 9/11, I was on one of the relief crews bringing, food and clothing down, people working down there, and Ken was down there. I had found every single day he was putting in hours, and he was part of the crew. People don't know this, but he was part of the group of officers that actually found those Port Authority police officers who were underground and saved them. Ken was part of, unfortunately, he didn't pull them out, but he was part digging for those guys. And he did heroic work. When the plane crashed in over by Far Rockaway, Ken was one of the first police officers to respond there. It was horrific work, the body bags. But Ken is extremely dedicated. He's a good, dedicated guy who really, really wants to do public service and would really like to get back to doing that. I think he does it with pride. Ken Boss works for the police force. I believe he's going into the military now. I'm not sure. But he's not on a modified status, but he's not on a full status. He's sort of desk duty, I guess is a simple way to put it. He'd like to be restored, or he should be restored. I think it would give him a lot of dignity. They did that.
We have to understand that we get police officers from society. So as we take in people from society, we are going to take in good ones and we're going to take in bad ones. And when we identify the bad ones, we need to extract them from the mix.
I think in the last 5 years, in terms of the Diallo case and its impact and whether or not things have changed, I don't think so. I think that change is occurring and it's a-coming, but change is relative to space and time, and change for whom. Certainly law enforcement as an institution, I don't believe has changed very much. Has the community changed? Absolutely. Are people angrier? Certainly. Are people less inclined to be abused and to take abuse and not fight back? Absolutely.
Some things have. We've done away with the street crimes unit. the police department has been more accessible to the community. They've been out there in school buildings and engaging in recreational activities, so that therefore it's not like the only time you see a police officer now is when something bad is happening or when they're arresting someone. But yet there's still a lot of things that we need to do. For example, the Civilian Complaint Review Board is still not independent of the police department and of the mayor, and that's something that we want. There's a whole legislative package up in Albany where we call some things from residency requirement for police officers to drug and alcohol testing of police officers subsequent to a shooting, to an independent investigator from the Attorney General's office. These are still things that we still haven't received or we still haven't done in order to address the overall problem. The fact that, it was just the other day that the Diallo family reached an agreement in terms of compensation. We thought that should have happened a long time ago.
The settlements don't mean that much, really, because we pay for that. Under the Giuliani administration, this city paid out hundreds, I repeat, hundreds of millions of dollars in lawsuit settlements. That comes out of our pockets. Those are our tax dollars being spent there. The police officer isn't paying anything.
All of those bullets went through his body, and they're letting this police officer go away. That's not fair. That's not what we call justice. A lot of people told me to move over here. It's a bad place for me now to live, but I came to this house to live with Amadou. This is a memory for me. I used to have a great friend, a friend that anybody can wish to have, because he always talked to me. He always put my mind into some right things. He always told me what to do. He was the kind of person that I needed, and I really miss him a lot, a lot.